You ever have that feeling where you know all the words, but you just can't seem to make them work in a real conversation? It's kind of like having a kitchen full of ingredients, but no recipe. Well, today, we're going to dive into what it really takes to go from just knowing a language to truly speaking it.
So, what is the secret sauce? What really makes someone fluent? Is it about perfect grammar, a massive vocabulary, or is it something a little more personal? We're going to figure this out by looking at two totally different scenes. First, we'll see a basic scripted lesson, and then we're going to jump to a high-stakes speaking test to see what happens when those skills are put under some real pressure. All right, let's start at square one. Our first example is a really simple scripted chat. Think of this as the absolute foundation, the building blocks you need for any real conversation. And what's fascinating here is just how structured it is. It's a four-step process every time. First you listen, then you learn the new words, then you practice answering questions, and finally, you do something called shadowing, where you talk along with the speakers to really nail the pronunciation. It's all about repetition, building that solid base brick by brick. Now, listen to the tone here. This conversation is all business, isn't it? It's purely transactional. It's not about making friends or sharing feelings. It's about learning a specific task, how to lay down the law about something that's not up for negotiation. This is language being used as a tool, not really as a way to connect.
And this right here is a perfect example of what these lessons are all about. It takes a really common phrase, take it or leave it, and just breaks it down. This is the nuts and bolts stage of learning, mastering those essential little phrases you'll hear all the time.
And it's the same deal with a simple word like rush. The lesson gives it a clear, practical definition. So the goal is to build up this solid toolkit of words and phrases. But what happens when you have to actually use that toolkit in the real world without a script? Well, let's take a look.
Okay, so you've done your homework, you've got the foundation, you know the words, you know the grammar. But what happens when the script gets tossed out the window and you have to think on your feet? That brings us to our second scene, a real, high-pressure speaking test.
I mean, just look at the difference here. On the one hand, you have that rigid, all-business conversation. On the other, it's totally spontaneous and deeply personal. We've jumped from talking about fixed work hours to talking about a sister who feels like the same person. It's a massive leap, from just using language to truly expressing yourself.
Just listen to how she answers. When she's asked about her home, she doesn't just list a few facts. She tells a little story packed with personality and genuine emotion. This isn't just an answer, it's a real moment of connection. And that, right there, is what makes her sound so incredibly fluent.
Now, this performance was so good, it actually got broken down by an expert examiner. And his analysis, well, it gets right to the heart of that subtle difference between just being good at a language and being truly deeply fluent. So let's look at our scores. This is where it gets kind of wild. For pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar, she gets a band 9. That's the highest score you can possibly get. It's almost unheard of. I mean, her technical skills are basically flawless.
Okay, so if she's perfect on 3 out of the 4 main things they measure, what gives? What's the one thing that's holding her back from a perfect score across the board? And here it is. This is the moment. When the questions switch from being personal to being more abstract, she starts to hesitate. You can feel her searching, not for the right words, but for the right idea. She even asks herself out loud, why was this hard for me? This is where we see the fluency start to wobble, just a little. But the examiner's advice is so simple and so powerful. He basically points out that she's at her absolute best, her most fluent, when she's talking about people she actually cares about. So the key for her is to take those tough, abstract questions and somehow connect them back to her own life. So what does this all boil down to? It means that true fluency isn't just about technical skill. It's about that emotional connection. Her greatest strength isn't her perfect grammar. It's her ability to share her own stories, to talk about her own life. That's her superpower. Okay, so how do we bring these two worlds together? What's the path that connects that very basic scripted lesson to this incredible spontaneous performance? Let's map out what that journey to true fluency actually looks like.
It really comes down to 2 key ingredients. First, you absolutely need that foundation, the vocab, the grammar, all that structured practice. That's your toolkit. But the second part, and maybe the most important, is the performance. It's about unlocking that toolkit by talking about what you genuinely know and care about. Being authentic, that's your secret weapon.
In the end, it's not really about how many rules you know, is it? It's about the stories you have inside you. Fluency isn't just about speaking a language, it's about speaking your truth in that language. So the real question for all of us is, what's the story you're going to tell?